So they decide to make things or straighten out things, and they say that we will make your husband young again. But in order to test her, the two Ashwini Kumaras and her husband, whose body is completely decrepit with old age, all three of them, the Ashwini Kumaras make them look just like each other. So there are three people, like triplets, but adult triplets, and they're all looking similar. So, and they said, you select any one of us. So choice number one is she may select Ashwini Kumar. Choice number two is she may select an Ashwini Kumar. Choice number three is her husband, but she doesn't know who's who. So in today's text 17, the Ashwini Kumaras were very pleased to see Sukanya's chastity and faithfulness. Why? She prayed to them, you help me find which one is my husband, and which are how do I see you two in the three? So they're very pleased. They showed Chavan Muni, her husband, and after taking permission from him, they returned to the heavenly planets in their plane. So they only bless her with some wisdom. She could understand that of these three guys, for two of them, their eyelids do not move, and there are some hints by which you can understand whether somebody is a demigod or not. They are hovering over planet Earth. They don't really touch. So there are many things mentioned in our Vedic wisdom. So they said, all right, girl, it was just a test. We're very happy. And thereafter, King Sharyati, desiring to perform a sacrifice, went to the residence of Chavanamuni. So then Sukanya, with her brand new old husband, is brand new because he's young, exceedingly beautiful, built like an Adonis, Greek god of love or something like that. And like the fairy tale, they were living happily ever after. But ever after is not really ever after. One philosopher said that anything which ends in here and they lived happily ever after is the second last chapter. There is always one extra chapter where there is some misery, some calamity, or life will throw something, like they say, the spanner in the works. So now her father, Sukanya's father, he has to perform a fire sacrifice. A fire sacrifice, friends, in the previous ages was like a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and sometimes a big bash, a huge fire sacrifice, big event. Everybody is to be called. Some of the fire sacrifices were meant for prosperity in the region, some were meant for good management, good rainfall, protection of the subjects. So everything was centered around a fire sacrifice. So King Sharyati went to the residence, and he just came there to get an invitation. He thought that I should invite this son-in-law of mine, who's a ancient sage. But what did he see? To his horror, he saw by the side of his daughter a very beautiful young man, as bright as the sun. Text 19. After receiving obeisances from his daughter, the king, instead of offering blessings to her, appeared very displeased, and he spoke as follows. Now the king may have a choice that, wow, look, whom did she land with? She just got some beautiful, handsome person. But as I said, the first layer of our understanding is these are those old times. And please, at least for the sake of an assumption, the king, what he's saying now, should be assumed as very natural. Please do not look at King Sharyati's comments from today's New York, Mumbai, New Jersey, London, Paris, Rome, Tokyo vision. We will try to transport ourselves into the past. some heavy words here. Alert, heavy word alert. Oh, unchaste girl, what is this that you have desired to do? You have cheated the most respectable husband who is honored by everyone. For I see that because he was old, diseased, and therefore unattractive, you have left his company to accept as your husband this young man who appears to be a beggar from the street. Wow. Last word is advagam, comparable to a street beggar. Now, you may feel that, well, the first one was not exactly a love marriage. It was more like a bargain marriage. The sage should not curse him. Therefore, king was afraid. And the king didn't even ask his daughter that, would you like to marry this old man? And he didn't have money. He didn't have estate, mansion, property, stocks, bonds, nothing. And she's just supposed to serve him. But this is what the king said. Prabhupada's purport. This shows the values of Vedic culture. So point number one. Now we are going into the value system of Vedic way of life. According to the circumstances, Sukanya had been given a husband who was too old to be compatible with her. Prabhupada agrees. There is no question of compatibility here. Because Chavana Muni was diseased and very old, he was certainly unfit for the beautiful daughter of King Sharyati. Second agreement, he was not fit to marry a princess. I will give you two other instances from the Srimad Bhagavatam itself, where what Prabhupada is saying here, but something opposite to that has happened. So we need to understand these purports with not just a pinch of common sense, but a ton of common sense. And those two occasions are when Kardama Muni was married to Devahuti. It was not like the Kardama Muni was a rich person, but Swayambhuva Manu, he decided, no, you are fit. And again, for many months, Devahuti also had to suffer. But later, Kardama Muni, by his mystic power, he gave her everything. So it does happen that someone can have this kind of an incompatibility. And what I would like to focus on is there is incompatibility in Vedic times, and there is incompatibility, in today's times. Do we have the wisdom to deal with it? So rather than saying, oh, this was injustice, this girl was not even asked whether she liked him, and now that she got her husband got kind of a makeover in today's language, and the father is cursing her. Not like that. So because Chavana Muni was diseased and very old, he was certainly unfit for the beautiful daughter of King Sharyati. Nonetheless, Prabhupada is saying, her father expected her to be faithful to her husband. When he suddenly saw that his daughter had accepted someone else, even though the man was young and handsome, he immediately chastised her as asati, unchaste, because he assumed that she had accepted another man in the presence of her husband. Now this is that sticky part. We will come to it soon. According to Vedic culture, even if a young woman is given an old husband, she must respectfully serve him. This is chastity. It is not that because she dislikes her husband, she may give him up and accept another. This is against Vedic culture. According to Vedic culture, a woman must accept the husband given to her by her parents and remain chaste and faithful to him. Therefore, King Sharyati was surprised to see a young man by the side of Sukanya. So that ends our 3 verses, with the last one having a purport. Now we'll try to unbox this episode. Of course, this stuff is to be discussed in maybe a week-long seminar, because that's how we all will have our own stories to say. Some of us will agree, oh yeah, this is true. Some of us will say, no, my life experience is not like that. So where do we stand vis-a-vis this particular verse anyway? So I just read that there is a very popular saying in the Abrahamic tradition, especially the biblical tradition, that what God has put together, let no man make it asunder. That means the union of man and woman should be seen as something coming from above, something coming from God. Traditionally speaking, when that tradition broke down because of the pressures of the industrial revolution, urbanization, and people slowly going towards more and more of driving away spiritual thought or spiritual wisdom from their daily life, and then things began to crumble. The family structure began to crumble. So it was one uh, English philosopher, G.K. Chesterton, who was opposed on, um, or he was opposing so many changes in the Family Act. And one of his statements was that frivolous divorce will give rise to frivolous marriages. He was not saying that divorce should not be allowed, but what's important is, and he was active in the 1880s, 1890s, something like that. So we have one situation where women were not allowed property, women are not allowed to move out of a situation. The great Russian novelist Leo Tolstoy, he wrote a something like 1,000-page novel called Anna Karenina. And this Anna is stuck in a loveless marriage. So people today, students who study history, who study literature, they feel, what's the big deal in reading 1,000+ pages about some girl who just wants to get out of a marriage? I mean, you can get separation papers in 15 minutes. What's the big deal? So society, Western society as well as traditional Indian society, both had these systems in place, but because of the attack of time, all these values, they slowly became eroded. Here, Sukanya and Chavanamuni's episode comes to a very happy ending. It's like a syrupy, sugar-coated ending where the father is very angry that why did you do that? And then she says, "No, father, this is your son-in-law." And he says, "But when I left many, many years ago, he was an old man." And she tells the whole story, and he says, "Oh, what a nice misunderstanding. I'm so happy. By the way, some of you could be using Chavan Prash." this this sage is the one who is, is given the credit for devising that. Chavanprash is a medicine used for rejuvenation, making you young again. I don't think it will work now, even if you have Chavanprash today. Just for the sake of understanding reality, the biggest Chavanprash manufacturer in India has a godown filled with pumpkins. Now, the major factor of making Chavanprash is you need to have the amala fruit, amalaki. But why do they have a huge godown filled with pumpkins? Because most of what goes as Chavanprash is not that amla, but other things are added. And therefore, of course, nobody can say that they will become young again by eating that thing. But this Chavan Muni is famous for having that, devised that formula. So, coming to this point of a family structure, uh, even today, one of the basic human instincts is to have a stable mental environment where you can be happy, the family structure is crumbling. It may not work. Again, as I said, I'll revisit this part. There is the reality which is Sukanya, Sharyati, and Chavan Muni's time, and therefore do not look at how he is chastising, rebuking, scolding his daughter as a you unchaste girl, and someone young person or even a old person reading today might feel, what kind of why are you abusing her? No, why are you ranting and raving at her? What if there was no miracle and she actually found some younger person? Was it a sin to leave the husband when marriage was not working? So there we come, today we come to this stage of how do we make things work then? Do we want to make them work? For our software applications, for our government, for transportation, everything, if something fails, immediately there is a concerted effort to make things work. Recently, Boeing, which is a aircraft manufacturing company, 2 or 3 of their aircraft suddenly crashed and some technical snag was discovered. How did the company react? They put in massive efforts to understand what is that is not working. So if society, and especially armed with Srimad Bhagavatam's wisdom, I know that our ISKCON society also is a microcosm of the outside world. We cannot say that let the whole world come through our preaching, through our chanting, through our dancing. But if, say, a young couple comes in and they have problems, should we say that both of you just chant 32 rounds or fast on Ekadasis and all your problems will go away? Will that solve it? Or just like the outside world, what they do, aircrafts are flying for the last 120 years. But of course, if you see the first aircraft, there was no comfort there. It was just one guy somehow reclining horizontally. But at least the notion was that human beings can fly. And now the fly vision is now let me fly in comfort. So flying is there, but flying in comfort is not there. Sometimes the comfort factor can be compromised, but not the security factor. What if they provide you with the finest wining and dining and experience up in the sky, but they say, but some of our planes do crash, so you're on your own. Well, we say, well, I don't want the extra fine food, but just take me safely from New York to California. That's all. So if marriage is to be seen like a journey, both partners, they seek security and they seek comfort. I would be happy to be corrected, but sometimes more than comfort, security should be given a little bit of an extra edge. Here, security is in the sense of mental security, fidelity towards each other, knowing that our marriage has a goal. Like previously, or people without that kind of a guidance, they don't even know why they are falling in love. They don't even know why they're getting married. And sometimes they don't even know why they're getting separated. I mean, they do know, but there is no definite vision or wisdom behind that. On impulse, first stage of getting attracted. On impulse, the second stage of either formalizing it or sometimes not even formalizing it. And on impulse, the third stage of separation. I read a nice quote by a counselor. She's more like a communications expert. So she said, I tell people, never threaten separation when you're angry. either spouses, do not threaten when you're angry. Why? Because you threaten that, you can go away, you can go to dash, 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 or she says, you can go to dash, 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 whatever. I will do it. I can do it. I'll show you. After some time, you think about it and you say, no, that's not that big of an issue. But now your false ego says, hey, she told you, if you are man enough, do it. Or he told you, let me see how you do it. So very soon, the issue goes from the mental department to the false ego department. And friends, when we are chanting in this kind of a mixed way, offensive chanting, offenseless chanting, a little bit, we are simply helpless in front of the false ego. And therefore, there is one episode after another of simply repenting. The other day, and I'll conclude with this, there was a nice article in dandavats.com about how to make marriages work. So, among the common sense advice, pieces of advice given, is every issue has to end by bedtime. Whatever has happened, talk about it, discuss about it, but do not have it as a carry forward for the next day. Regularly communicate, clarify expectations. So these are some of the things by which we can make these value system valid today again, and that's how we can have a stable, happy system even today. Hare Krishna. Any comments or any questions or feedback?
Hare Krishna, Shyamananda Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Well, I would like to invite the devotees. If anybody has any comment or question, please feel free to ask, sir.
Hare Krishna Shyamananda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful session. I feel like your session's always very practical, straight, direct, and wisdom filled. I apologize. My question isn't so much around, I guess, making marriages work, but I did want to just bring it back, I guess, to the core of part of the story. If you could explain, I guess, the mindset, I'm quite curious and intrigued why the Muni, who has spent all his life, alone and austere and meditating and probably fully absorbed on the Supreme Lord, why all of a sudden he would even accept a wife and want to get married when he is already such an old age and very happily situated. It seems like this would have been just any disturbance to his practices. So understood, this princess had done an offense, but doesn't necessarily mean he would want a complete life change and accept a wife, which is a big responsibility. Could you perhaps explain this mindset or decision to actually accept a wife, just given his position and age? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Athena. For me, this kind of things opens up a vista, opens up a window towards understanding how things were there in the past. When we say a Vedic Rishi, when we see somebody who's a meditator, we always conjure notions of big beard, living alone in a cave, wanting nothing to do with society, never wanting to have a family. But that's not the accurate view. The Srimad Bhagavatam has Kashyapa Muni, wow, what a family he has. One wife and her sons are demigods, another wife, her sons are demons. And they all fight with each other, but they are very proud of their father. We have Kardama Muni. So we have so many Munis. We also, of course, we have Narada Muni, who is not a householder at all. But we have Vyasadeva, who also is a Vyasa Muni, but he has a family. So it is very clear that having a family or not having a family was not a kind of a deciding factor. For many, of course, there is one overwhelming factor, and that is many of these personalities could sense that all these years I was meditating alone, and now suddenly this thing has happened. I see the hand of providence in it, and I would like to comply. I am a cooperator. So these personalities, not at your level, my level, but at their level, when they see that this is something being dictated to me, so I should play that role. And because ultimately Sukanya, Chavana, Sharyati, Ashwini Kumar, they're all related to Krishna, therefore this story comes in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If not, the other Purana, they also have so many other stories. So just tying all the loose ends, these sages would enter into the Grihastha ashram, provided there was a purpose to be served behind that. Kardama Muni entered and he said, I will stay as long as I give you a son who will take care of you, and then I go back to my previous occupation. That also is allowable according to those rules. So these are some thoughts.
Okay, I hope Athena is here. Okay, sorry.
Oh, you can't unmute yourself?
She should be able.
Yeah, now she's unmuted.
Yes, thank you so much. I apologize I wasn't able to, but that is very clear. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
You're welcome.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, you gave a hypothetical, let's say, within the movement, right? If marriages aren't working, right? What are they supposed to do? You said chant 32 rounds, and it seemed like a rhetorical question. So I was wondering how you would actually answer that question. If not 32 rounds.
You're bringing a real life case before me. I don't have that kind of a thing. Well, as I said, if something is not working, isn't the outside world, the so-called karmi world or the so-called world of sense enjoyers, they sit together, they put their best brains, they put their resources and try to find out why it is not working, and they come up with some solutions. So this is something common sense, like this dandavats.com. I don't know, yeah, Dharma Setu Das has written the article. And these are 3 points. Always forgive one another. Now, that is the core of spirituality, to cultivate the habit of forgiving each other. Again, I'm not going into the whole details behind that. Become best friends. Now, the husband and wife, the disciple and the guru, Krishna and the Jiva. Yesterday we were discussing in our temple class here, there are 3 levels of friendship. We may think friends are those who hang out together, eat pizza, watch football, or whatever. Okay, that could be one level of friendship. But in a deeper level, you have friendship between the spiritual master and the disciple. Friendship between Krishna and the Jiva. Krishna himself says, I am your best friend. Suridam Sarvabhutanam. And there is friendship between husband and wife. Of course, there is friendship between Vaishnavas, In a brahmachari ashram, friendship between brahmacharis. In a brahmacharini ashram, friendship between the brahmacharinis. Whatever. This friendship needs to be cultivated. It's like cultivating a garden. You need to know what the seeds have to be, how much fertilizer, how much water, how much sunshine. You should allow it to grow. In today's times, where is this clause called allow the friendship to grow? We think friendship means a click and somebody becomes a friend on Facebook. And therefore you feel that that same click in life and somebody can become a friend. It's not true. The opposite is true. With a click, you can unfriend someone. that can happen. And the third point he says in this article is be kind. Just be kind. And again, these three could be called sutras. They can expand, but we need to work on that. So thank you for bringing up this point. And this small session is not going to brainstorm as to what can be done. But even if I put that seed in everyone's heart and mind that this is an important issue and we need to work on it, by Krishna's mercy, by Prabhupada's mercy, if we pool our resources, we can come up with something much better than at least something better than what we have today. May not be ideal, but at least a little bit better. What do you say?
Well, your initial response was, just be friends, just be best friends. In fact, just forgive, And I'm like, boy, if that was the answer, they probably wouldn't be in problem in the first place. They wouldn't have had they wouldn't have had to go to you, If it were, it just sounds a little simplistic, if I may.
I agree. My presentation has that fault. You know what I did? I just tried to poke the issue. And I think now we have Yashoda Dulal Prabhu and his good wife, Shri Radhika Mataji, their hand is up. So maybe you could give some deeper understanding, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, my obeisances.
No
Thank you so
pranam.
much for a wonderful class. But something, I was thinking, reflection, why a lot of marriages does not work and what caused the problem. Usually it is expectation of one another to be in a certain way or serve or enjoy one another in a certain way. And one, if doesn't fit that shoe or does not behave in a certain way, we just commit offenses towards this person. And we disappointed immediately. So that's, I think, so for me is the root cause of problem, because people commit offenses very easily based on that type of expectation, or they view of enjoying certain type of relationships. And because they commit constant offenses toward each other casually, they lose that desire to be with each other, because nobody want to be constantly dominating. And sometimes in family you see one person can be too dominating. Usually it often comes from men, because by nature women like to be more submissive, but not necessarily in this day and age. Women also can be very dominating in the way how they want to be treated. And sometimes they're too difficult to be around because they feel they're always princesses or queens, but they don't carry out those type of qualities. And men can get very frustrated. So yeah, it's usually about this. I feel that from my observation, that's the cause problem in a lot of relationships.
Thank you for your input.
Yeah, I know that this word expectation comes up a lot when it comes to conflicts, but I find that the problem of expectation, I think, is a bit of a gray area, because in any relationship, some basic level of expectation is required for a relationship to function. So I'm just wondering, at what point, in that continuum of expectation does the expectation become unhealthy? For example,
Correct.
there's the expectation of respect, just common respect. When do you cross the line into, the wrong levels of expectation,
Right.
So it's a little bit complicated, I think, maybe.
It is.
Because there is, that's why there is a moral codes for communication exist. And if somebody break those moral codes of communication, they must be responsible. And that's why, even in society, it's natural for us to recognize what's right, what's wrong. We quickly recognize that if somebody raising the voice and trying to communicate disrespectfully, you don't need philosophers or, tons of books to recognize. So that's why there is, even in relationships, there should be moral codes and communication skills. If somebody breaking, then they have to hold responsible. Yes, that's unacceptable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good point that there should be at least a base level of expectation that should be honored by both sides, base level. And I guess, it's a question of trying to establish what that base level is in every relationship, maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you, both of you, for asking as well as answering. Anyone else would like to comment or ask? We have, say, about 10, 12 minutes.
I have a request here for a question, Prabhu. Let me see
Sure.
if they're sending it anonymous or if they want to ask it.
It's 8 o'clock.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dandavat. This is Jitu.
Hey, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your knowledge with us. My question is around the similar lines, not specifically related to marriage or getting separated, but noticing these things very often, and arguments in society, disagreements, and small arguments, disagreements going to greater extent, splitting of communities, etc. And these things are very visible and very common these days. It has become very common in our society. And the general way of thinking or the thought is that we have something more meaningful than the overall society may have. That is our practice, that is our scriptures, that's our association. So if we have something meaningful, if we have something more concrete, why is it that our society is behaving or we are behaving in such a way that we, in a very earthly manner, because we see the same thing happening in outside world, or sometimes even I'm baffled seeing things which are uncommon outside, but is very happening here very freely. So what are those few basic points that one individual should be thoughtful of or try to practice individually, so that I, as a person, be a contributor to a goodness for my society and not for something else, or create fights or splits up or anything, but What is those few important things, basic things that I can do personally for the society, for our community?
Thank you, Jitu Prabhu. The last line was the icing on the cake as to you're asking, what do I do? This itself shows that you are a vital component of any community. The more people ask this question, how do I contribute? That community becomes strong, vibrant to that extent. When more people ask, why doesn't the community serve me on this particular level, or what am I getting from it? To that extent, it fails. That's the law of nature. You can't act against it. One thing which came to me through discussion with many seniors, much more wiser people, is that in our society, there are some things which are more mechanical, more having something to do with logistics, organization, system. And I give the example of Rath Yatras, government permissions, PR, raising funds in India or abroad or whatever. We learn those skills very fast, right? So you don't need to teach a temple how to hold a festival. They can do that. That kind of logistical wisdom is there, that knowledge is there. But then the other things like happy families, happy youth, happy couples, happy old people, happy vanaprasthas. Now that is the next level of your achievement. That goes in the subtle part. So for those who know physics, there is Newtonian physics, which is strict laws. And then there is quantum physics, which is having subtle laws. So that's much deeper, that's much difficult to understand, more difficult to implement, and that's like a challenge. So if you and me, we have joined the movement and we have taken the benefit of things which have been given to us, like already established temples, festivals. If we read the Lilamrit, that was a big challenge for those who joined in 60s. Just to keep an ashram together, just to keep the funds together or whatever. Now, albeit I understand some temples may still have the issue, but more or less, like we have an international headquarters, we have people coming together for meetings, we have resolution, we have so many things lined up. Again, I'm not saying that itself is sufficient, but that is the first level of success. The second level is, as you rightly said, how do we use that wisdom in action? How do we see that our communities? I don't think we will have one magic wand which will make the entire world-wide ISKCON into one big community. We will have small micro communities who are growing from strength to strength. They will contribute to a state level, district level, that will make a nation. Many nations together will make the entire international society strong. So, as they say, think globally, but act locally. So, we do have global communication to talk to each other. Like 20 years before, I could never give a class to devotees in North America, but right now it is possible just like with the click of a button, and I can do that. And it's not expensive either. So gadgets have become cheap, but communication as an art is still very expensive. So never mistake the process of communication with the result of communication. The process has become easy and fast, but the result of good communication is friendship, harmony, understanding, appreciation for each other, forgiving. Well, how can you forgive unless you talk? But what makes you talk? What will make two people come together and decide that we need to talk? Is there an app for that? No. The app is meant for easing your ability to talk. But the desire to talk has to come from your spiritual side. And that is something which you, me, all of us together as single individuals can start doing that, and that will lead to the ultimate success later.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
It's very nice seeing you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Same here. Goshan Prabhu, should we stop?
Unless there are no other questions, and if you have time for you.
No, I have time.
Yeah.
Just a small clarification. Previously it was 5:45 India time till 6:45. So now it will be 4:45 India time till 5:45.
Yes.
But I see Radha Muralidhar Darshan already there. So how come Darshan will be at
8? Because we have a daylight saving change. It's like an hour early now.
hour early or hour and 15 minutes early? An
Just-
hour early.
Yeah, just an hour early. No,
Okay.
it's an hour. Even
All right.
it's an hour early. Just an hour early, bro.
Never mind.
Yeah. Thank you so much, bro. Especially I loved the last final discussion, how it's also a spiritual dimension which fixes the social dimension ultimately.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your wisdom. Very grateful for your presence.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Mancha Kalpataru Vishnu Kripa.
His Grace Shyamananda Prabhu ki jai.
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 Thank you so much. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Hare
Haribol.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.